attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the travel professional community and homebasedtravelagent.com, we welcome you to the Scenic River Cruises webinar. My name is Sandy Elson, and I'll be facilitating this webinar today. We are having a little bit of a glitch in the software today, so our speaker will be speaking. You'll be able to hear him, and I will be advancing the slides from my own computer, so bear with us while we do that. Before we get started, a couple of things you should know. You're all muted so that you will be able to hear us, but we won't be able to hear you. We do this to cut down on background noise, which can be distracting. We do, however, welcome questions. You can type in your questions in the question area you see on the right-hand panel on your screen. There's a blue bar on the right-hand dashboard with the word questions written on it. If you click on the little triangle next to the word questions, a blank template will drop down with an empty bar at the bottom where you can type your questions and then hit return. At the end of the presentation, we will get to as many questions as we can. We're excited to have Scenic Cruises with us today. We appreciate that Scenic is so supportive of the travel professional community, homebasedtravelagent.com, and travel agents, and the time they're taking to participate in this webinar. For those of you who are not familiar with Scenic Cruises is an Australian company offering fantastic 5-star all-inclusive river cruises in Europe and Russia. Our speaker today is Randy Goodrich. Randy is working with Scenic Cruises to help get the word out about this wonderful product for your upscale clients. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Randy so he can get started. I'll be back in a few minutes before the end of our time together to ask Randy your questions. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you, and good day to everybody. We will persevere and make it through this presentation. It's going to be interesting, but I hopefully will be able to give you a good understanding of Scenic Cruises and the head company Scenic Tours and the new company Emerald Waterways that's being introduced this year. Little background, Scenic Tours is actually one of the larger tour companies in the world based in Australia. New to North America, they're entering North America with the cruise product that they started in 2008. So it's a very new product. You'll find their ships that go through this to be very innovative in their design features, very all-inclusive in both all the various items that are included at one price, as well as the choice of venues from dining to the ground operation. You're giving people choices all the time to do what they'd like to do to see and experience the destination. So that's a real brief description of Scenic. As I mentioned, we're also introducing a new river cruise line, Emerald Waterways, this year. Scenic Cruises would be a 5-star, all-inclusive property, or if you want to call it that, and Emerald would be more of a 4 to 4+ star, a little bit more competitively priced. So we'll cover both those, but focus mostly on Scenic. Scenic is designed for your luxury clients, people that like things like Regent Cruise Lines and other all-inclusive upscale type of products. They would be ideal for Scenic River Cruises. Just a little background about me. I've actually been an agent involved in travel agency business for 38 years. I still do a little bit of home-based agent business. I've owned 2 agencies in the past, sold those. I started a company called Passport Online, you may be familiar with, which does web content and cruise booking engine for travel agents. I retired from that about a year and a half ago. And actually a friend of mine who used to be one of my supplier clients at Passport asked me to help him with the startup in the USA for Scenic Cruises. There have been some promotions for Scenic in the past, and I was aware of them, but I wasn't aware of the type of quality and luxury accommodations and services that they offered. So I was able to go on a trip with them in October on the Danube, and I've been on quite a few other river cruises in the past, and it pretty much was a wow factor when I got on board. I was not expecting it. and it's kind of like if you like to stay at, you know, Sheraton's and Marriott's and things like that, and then all of a sudden you stay at a Ritz-Carlton, you suddenly realize the difference. So let's, without further ado, we'll go ahead and move ahead to the second slide here. So I just went through the Scenic Cruise story, the onboard experience. We'll cover that. You'll see the cabins are on Scenic itself are typically 20% larger, as is the public space. So there's fewer cabins, so they can be a little bit larger. The onshore experiences, they have their own buses that follow the ship, so you have at least 2 bus tours a day, plus walking tours and bike tours and self-guided tours. So there's quite a bit of choice, more so than you'll find with most any other river cruise line. They focus on Europe and the Russian river between St. Petersburg and Moscow, all the major rivers in Russia, in Europe, and they will be adding even Bordeaux next year. So we'll go through that again. I talked about Royal Caribbean, and we'll talk a little bit about Emerald. Next slide, please. So as it's coming up, you'll find that Scenic, when you start to look at the brochure and you read about them and maybe hear about them in the trades, they talk about, first of all, their ships being called spaceships. I found that a bit odd at first, but especially being on board, it's all about the spaciousness. As I mentioned, for the most part, the rooms are 20% larger, as is the lounge area. So that's what they mean by spaceship. It's more spacious, and they use more curves and things like that. It just feels more spacious when you get on board. The Scenic Enrich programs are their special events where they would take you to a castle or some kind of special feature. Typically, it's an upcharge with most cruise lines and whatnot, but with Scenic, that's included as part of one price. The tailor-made program is their GPS program we'll go into later, which is quite fascinating. The highlights are just the different tour options and opportunities to really experience the destination, because after all, river cruise is really focused on the destination. And free choice is similar to that, giving people free choice to see the destination in the mode that they would like, either by bus, by walking, or by bike. And the Riverview is the onboard infotainment system that we'll cover too. So we'll go to the next slide. It all starts when you're met at the airport, your customers are, and so they will be brought in. Typically, unless there's a group arriving, the group can use the bus, typically by a private transfer. They'll be met at the ship. In this case, the gentleman in the suit is the cruise director. There's a cruise director on board who will be the person, the go-to person when your clients have any special requests or needs of any type. The gentleman in the back with the white shirt is the butler. And yes, there's a butler service available for every cabin on the ship, even the lowest price cabins. So the next slide, we'll start looking at the interior of the ship. Excuse me. This is the Panorama Lounge, which is the main lounge and where people really hang out a lot. So here we're looking actually back at the entranceway, which would be to the left of the coffee maker you can see. And so you enter in, you've got this really beautiful, lush, very comfortable, warm lounge area. The coffee pot, by the way, the coffee, that's one of those, push the button and get a cappuccino, a latte, whatever you want. That's quite popular. And next to it, the large screen is going to show you your customers where they are on the cruise and keep them up to date at any point in time. The next slide, we'll turn around and look back into the lounge at the Panorama Bar. The Panorama Bar is quite the gathering place. Most river cruise ships I've been on, the bar is kind of off to the side. On Scenic, they put it in the middle. It's beautiful with all marble. It's three-sided, so that there's plenty of room for people to sit up. And at evening, it's quite popular. But during the day, it also acts as one of our dining options. So on the back right side of this bar, there are ability to get light snacks during the day, sandwiches, soups, things like that. There's lots of desserts and whatnot. You'll see some pictures of that shortly. So it's just a beautiful lounge, and again, it's larger than most lounges you will see on any of the river ships. So the next slide, the only place you can spend money on this ship once your client has paid the price up front is if they want a hairdressing of some type or a massage. And so this is the only place you can really spend money. I think there's a few watches, and it's just a real low-key area that off the lobby that you could buy if you wanted, but basically this is it. So everything else is included on a scenic river cruise. So your accommodations, your transfers, all you want to eat, all of your cocktails, wine, beer, anytime they want it. It's all included. All the sightseeing, tours, the different options, everything's included except this. So, next slide. The dining options, we have the main crystal dining room, which is down below the main deck. It's lovely. It can accommodate everybody on board. However, they do also have other options we'll go into now. So the next slide will show one of the special evenings. This will be the seafood evening. We're going to have different evenings during the week based on where they are. So if they're on the Danube in Bavaria, they'll have a Bavarian evening, etc. So very, very nicely done. The next slide. This is Portobello's. Portobello's is an intimate Italian dining experience for your customer. It takes up to 36 people a night. It's actually in the back of the lounge behind the bar. They close that off and make it into the tables for 2, 4, 6, 8, depending on what people want. And then they have this lovely separate dining experience. And it's right actually in the bow of the ship. So if it's still light out, they'll have a beautiful view while they're dining. The next slide is the table La Rive, which is in the back of the dining room. There's a table that seats typically 12. This is reserved for the customers on the top deck who are paying the most for the cruise. So that would be the suites and the upper cabins, upper staterooms in that area. It's a 6-course wine inclusion. So they'll switch the wines with every course. It's quite a lovely evening and very popular. Next slide. We'll go to the River Cafe, which is that back right of the bar area I mentioned. So during the day, you get breakfast. This is the early rise of breakfast area, so they'll have some pastries and coffee and tea for those who want to get up early at 6:30 or so and kind of look out the window, and have a cup of coffee and catch up on the news. Very nice. And then they start serving light food, as I mentioned, sandwiches, croissants, you name it, soups. So I just had a beep there. So it's a place that a lot of people hang out. I typically hung out here during the day when I was on, so they were still working, and I was doing emails. And yes, Wi-Fi throughout the ship is included. So the next slide will show you during nice weather days, when the opportunity is there, they'll serve a beautiful buffet up on the upper deck. And they're adding even some barbecue facilities, more barbecue facilities this next year. So they'll do more interesting type of buffets. Now we'll get into some of the staterooms. So go to the next slide. You'll see the basic level is on the first deck. This is just above river level. So there's an upper window. You do get light in, but you can't put deck down here because it would probably stink. So, but you'll start to see the accommodations, the color. Just a segue here. Scenic Tours is owned by, it's a family-owned operation. They actually own outright most of the ships. There's no cash on them. Mr. Maroney is the owner and runs the company. His wife is the designer, and she is a professional designer. So got a Just a beautiful woman's touch to the coloring and how everything is set up. Very comfortable and warm feelings throughout the ship. So this, even though this is the basic level, it's a lovely room. It's 169 square feet, 160 square feet. So typically in the area of what most of the other ships have in this category, and some of them in their higher categories, about the same size. The next slide will take us into the private balcony suite. As many of you might know, there's not that many ships that even offer balconies, especially full balconies where you can actually sit on them. They have French balconies and whatnot where you can lean out and look, but Scenic, 85% of the cabins have a full balcony. So you can see the balcony with the black and white chair and the table, 2 chairs and a table on the balcony. And you can see the lovely stateroom. The next slide, I'll show you, if you see the window on this first slide, you see it's a deck and it looks like it's open out there, which it is. And I'm going to show you a feature on this next slide. This is a picture I took from you can see I'm not a professional photographer, but I took it out of my room. It's very interesting. So right here, if you're looking, that deck with the 2 chairs and table appear to be in my cabin. And in fact, they essentially are, because the deck is an extension of the cabin, and it has the facility that you can close the door to the deck if you want, or you can keep it open, because there's 2 panels here, and you can raise and lower the panel. So where the railing goes across the middle, there's actually 2 panels in there. So it makes it an extraordinary feature. It makes the room, the cabin, feel much bigger, and you can have it lowered whenever the weather permits, or whenever you want to get fresh air or be able to look out past the railing, or you can close it if it's a little chilly or noisy or whatever. And you can keep your door to the deck open all the time, and it's a curtain that you can pull across. So if we go to the next slide, another beautiful photograph I took, but it does show you what they call the sun lounge feature. So the lady there is standing with her second panel partially up, so she's getting a little fresh air and maybe taking some pictures. The one next to her is totally down, and then there's one next to that that's partially up. There's one below her that's pretty much closed, except they look like they got a little open. They've got their drapes shut, so perhaps they're taking a nap and want the privacy, but they've got a little fresh air coming in. So it's just a wonderful feature that kind of really sets you back when you first realize what it avails you of. So we'll go to a professional picture on the next slide, and you see the couple there in their sun lounge. You can actually open up some of the newer ships. This has a sliding door. The newer ones have kind of an accordion, so it even opens up further. It's a very, very nice feature. Next slide. Every cabin has a mini bar in it. That mini bar is complimentary. It's going to be refreshed every day with whatever the client likes. So if they want it filled up with beer, they can have it filled up with beer or wine or the alcohol of choice or Coke or fruit drinks, whatever they want. The service will keep that well planified. The next slide, we'll start talking about some of the entertainment features. Up in the lounge area, they'll bring on local entertainment. So on our ship, we were in Germany, so we had the ONBOARD band, and it was excellent. Had everybody up and dancing. A lot of fun. So bring in some of the local folklore, local color. Next slide is just a picture. Now we'll go back into the accommodations. So this is a bathroom, typical bathroom in the stateroom. We have a nice, good-sized shower and very plentiful water, too. I was impressed with the water pressure. So it sounds like a silly thing, but when you're traveling, it's sure nice to have a good shower. So, L'Occitane type of lotions and soaps. This is a junior suite, the next slide. A little bit larger. The junior suite would typically be around 250 square feet. Your main cabins, staterooms with balconies at 200. 105 square feet. You'll find in a lot of ships out there that their main cabins are in the 180 square foot, so you got a little bit more room. The next slide will show you a deluxe bathroom. These would come with the suites, where you have a bathtub as well. So, next slide, we'll look at the Royal Balcony Suite. These are 315 square feet, so you see you have a second sitting area here. You have the deck on one side by the bed, on the other side it's just a window. And you can see the infotainment system on the wall there. We'll go into a little bit more into that later, but just again, this lovely, luxurious type of motif to these cabins. And the next slide will be the Big Daddy. This is the Royal Panorama Suite. There's nothing really like it anywhere that I know of on the rivers. It's 325 square feet, where they're actually enlarging that a little bit on the Gem, which is a special ship for the SEINE that's coming out this year. It's going to be even bigger. But it's lovely. The deck is facing the back of the ship. I'll show you a picture here in a second of how that's positioned on the ship. But this is the back, and then on the side you have a full window, like a panorama window. It's fantastic cabins. There's two of these. So we'll go to the next slide. You will see the two panorama suites, one on one side, one on the other. They built kind of an extension in the back of the ship to accommodate that. So for your clients, like only the best, this is the best. Next slide, we'll get into the butler service. It's available for every cabin on board. The butlers are actually some of the main stewards and wait staff. They're on a system where if you buzz them, they will get down to your cabin, and they can do an assorted number of different things for the people, including serve meals in the room. It's not always the same with every class of service and every category. Obviously, the suite people and the upper deck people get pretty much anything they want. A lot of them will use it for dining in the mornings or whatever. And they'll press clothes, they'll shine shoes, they'll help you figure out what you're doing during the day, or whatever you need. So, very nice. Similar to Region again. Next slide. So the infotainment system is included. It's a big flat panel TV, which obviously has TV. It's also hooked up to the internet, so that you can use that as a computer system as well and get online and scope things out. It also has a system that keeps you abreast of where you are on your trip and where you're headed, and videos to look at some history and get some background where you're headed, where you're going to be today. Next slide. The onshore experiences. As I mentioned earlier, Scenic is very much about offering choices. So you have these beautiful areas to visit. It's famous historically and culturally, the experiences. Everybody has a different way of wanting to do that, so Scenic tries very hard to give as many choices as possible. So we'll go into those. So the highlights will be, your walking tours that you're used to, and you have the headset. I'll show you that in a second. Theirs is kind of special, but you can get a local tour guide that will take the group around. The free choice, that's where you can take one of the bus trips. We have 4 buses that I mentioned that follow the ship, so that they're all the time. They do the tours, so you get 2 tours heading out different direction. We were in Passau, for example. Passau, if you haven't been there, it's right in the corner of Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic, where 3 rivers come together. And it's a pretty small area, though. So the city tour was a walking tour in the morning. Didn't take too long. And then there were 2 bus tours that people could take. One was to Salzburg, and the other was to Kresny Kornov in the Czech Republic. We took those, and they both end up meeting the ship. The ship takes off, and we meet at Linz, Austria. And some people stayed on board, and some people took a bike down. So you have options yet again. The Scenic Enrich, in the next slide, is the special exclusive events that are put on. So there's several of these. You typically at least one on a 7-day cruise, a couple on a longer cruise. This would be a picture of Marksburg Castle on the Rhine, which is one of the better preserved medieval castles. And I think there's a slide in here that will show where we're having lunch in that castle one day. But we're the only people in there. So the next slide will actually show you, this is the Scenic and Rich in Vienna. It's a good example. I was on a cruise a number of years ago where we stopped and had a concert in Vienna, concert and low ballet. It was fabulous, but we were one of, I think, 4 or 5 ships who had groups there. So it was kind of crowded, and it was just kind of a concert hall, which at the time seemed nice. Then when I went into this one that Scenic does, they actually lease out the Palais Liechtenstein, which is one of the beautiful palaces in Vienna, and we're the exclusive group in there at that time. So you can see it's down in the room there. There's only 169 people, and so we have our own private concert. So that's the Scenic and Rich. They have a number of these throughout the rivers, throughout the different cruise itineraries, and people are just totally wild. Next slide, the bikes. So they have in the neighborhood of 30 plus bikes on board that they go that stay with you the entire cruise. They are electrically assisted bikes, which for some of us who don't do a lot of biking. And I went on a 27-mile bike ride down through the Wachau Valley. It wasn't really something I thought I would do until I found out I had a little electricity helping me out in some of the hills and whatnot. We had, I don't know how many, I had 50, 60 people go on our bike tour. Absolutely fabulous, riding the bikes through the vineyards and the old villages, just spectacular. But people like this. You can also do it on your own, and the way you do it on your own, so typically they have a couple tours. But going to the next slide, they have an exclusive program called Scenic Tailor-Made. Scenic Tailor-Made is a device that will be in your cabin, in your client's cabin. There'll be 2 of them in there and a battery charger. You pull those out, and they will not only be your headset program if you're on a guided tour to listen to the tour guide. They're also a GPS unit that will help you do self-guided. So you can just go to the next slide. I'll show you an example. If your client's in Amsterdam and they want to just, they got some time, they want to go do their own walking tour or see the Rembrandt area, they simply push the button there and it starts talking to them, tells them, knows where they are because of the GPS, and starts guiding them to go see the Rembrandt walking tour. And then we'll guide them through the walking tour, providing information on the sites they should see and the history and background of some of the areas. So quite a few people who are more independently inclined, but when they took a different tour in the morning and in the afternoon they want to go out and do their own thing, they can do this. You can also take it on the bike with you if you want to do it that way. It will help you also get back to the ship and guide you back. And other people who are not too interested in taking the hikes around can sit on top of the ship and get a better idea of where they are and what sites there are to see and whatnot. So really a special program that they purchased and they're providing to all the clients. So some of the itineraries. Next slide, we'll start off it's primarily Europe river cruising. We'll go through the Europe options and then we'll touch on France and then the Russia. So in Europe, the next slide, just a brief overview. Typically, there's 8-day trips, 15-day trips, and there's a longer 20-some-day trip if you go, 23, I believe it is, all the way from Amsterdam to Bucharest. So you've got the Rhine. You can have the Rhine and Moselle. You can have the Rhine where you just go from Amsterdam to Basel. So if they have an extra week if you add the Moselle in there. The Jewels of Europe, that's the between Amsterdam and Budapest. So they'll come down the Rhine, over to the Main, across Germany to the Danube, and down to Budapest, or vice versa. One of the most popular courses is the 8-day Gems of the Danube between Nuremberg and Budapest. Also Amsterdam, Basel, that's where you go through the castle region of the Rhine, through the Rhine Gorge, where there's just a castle on every hill, basically. They also have the tulip time in Holland and Belgium, which runs in the springtime. And as I mentioned, they're starting a new cruise in Bordeaux next year. So go to the next slide. We'll look at a couple maps. For those of you aren't too familiar with these, so Amsterdam's up the top and Budapest down here. So you have to go through actually 3 rivers to navigate. And it's only been the last 20 years or so you could do this, but they built and completed the Main and the Danube canal that lock and connect the rivers. So you also see on the right on this slide that in this particular itinerary, the 15-day, there's 3 scenic and rich experiences. So that's in the castle or whatever, where they get to experience that. And there's 20 different free choice options for them. And the Scenic tailor-made GPS is available for use 14 out of the 15 days. Again, lots of opportunities. The next slide, this is the luncheon in the Marksburg Castle, just a picture of that. Actually dinner, I'd say, there. Next slide, itinerary of the Tulip cruise in the spring. So you can see that it's it's a full 8-day cruise. It's got 6 scenic free choice options as you go through, and pretty much tailor-made available most of the time. It's a lovely thing that we're going to see millions of tulips. The Rhine and the Moselle, pretty familiar itinerary, I'm sure, to a lot of you. Next slide. We should be on the gems of the Danube. So there's the option to fly into Prague or out of Prague, so you can have that Prague extension, 3 nights in Prague, and then go between Nuremberg and Budapest, or vice versa. Next slide is the Black Sea. So this would be Budapest south on the downriver. Goes all the way out to the Black Sea, then you end up in Bucharest. So, next slide, we'll get into France. So I'll go to the next slide, which is an overview of France, our cruises there. You've got the Seine River, and we have a brand new ship that will be coming out this summer. It's built specifically for the Seine because the Seine downriver in the Delta area is quite shallow, so most cruise lines will stop. And the highlights of this cruise is typically Normandy, the Normandy beaches area, D-Day, and with the other ships that stop, you have to take an hour-and-a-half bus ride each way. To Scenic, that our customers are 5-star type customers. They're not crazy about 3 hours of bus ride to see something. So they have built this new ship that will get all the way to Untitled, and I'll show you that in a minute. They also have the Rhone, and as I mentioned, they're adding the Bordeaux. And a unique feature with Scenic is combining these. So I'll show you some maps here where you'll see how they can combine these. So here's just an example of the Rhone, where you take a train down from Paris, and then they bus you right over to the ship in Chalon, and go down to end up in Nice, or vice versa. There's lots of scenic free choice. They have some new ones. It's 22 scenic free choices on this itinerary. There's a couple enriched experiences that they include. And again, the tailor-made device can be used 12 out of the 14 days. So again, lots of choices. So let's go to the Seine River. This is the new 11-day cruise. Go to the next slide. We'll show the map. So at the town that I can't pronounce too well, called back on Pool, not sure. The French a long time ago. That's where most of the ships will stop due to the depth of the water. Scenic, their new cruise boat ship will go to Untitled, and then from there you're basically at the beaches and the historical sites dealing with Normandy and D-Day. that's going to be quite popular. Example of the scenic and rich on there would be a plateau of a concert in the chateau, which would be lovely. That's the chateau area, one of them. And then the Bordeaux trip would be a train ride, the fast high-speed train from Paris down to Bordeaux, and then cruising along these rivers. Really, for your people, especially who love wine, that would be fabulous. They also have a scenic and rich, which would be Médoc, and again, another special experience included in the price. Here's an example where you
Randy, may I interrupt you for a second? We're getting
Sure.
some notes from some of the agents who are listening and watching that the slides are not all showing up. So I want to ask your permission when this is over to, if it's okay with you, if we send this PowerPoint to all the agents who are on the webinar today so they can see whichever slides they missed.
Yeah, sure. It's complicated since we have this little glitch.
Right, right. Okay, so agents, if you want to just listen for now, and we will be happy to send Randy's PowerPoint to everybody at the conclusion of the webinar. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, continue.
No problem, no problem. We'll make it work, and we don't have too much further to go here. The slide you should be seeing now is the 21-day SEINE and Bordeaux combination. So there is the ability, Scenic Tours is the tour companies, they know how to do the land portion as well. So there is, for those clients of yours who have a little bit more time, want to get a little bit more immersed, in this case in France, they can combine the SEINE and the Bordeaux trips or the Bordeaux and the Rhone trips to make a much more inclusive experience out of it by putting 2 cruises in and a little bit of land. So quite nice option. Next slide will be the Rhone and the Bordeaux to kind of see how that works, starting in Bordeaux, ending in Paris, or vice versa. Next slide would be an extension of the Bordeaux trip with a land portion into Spain. So just the point here is through Scenic, through one call, you can give your client some pretty interesting itineraries. The next slide is going into the Russian river cruising option, which is between St. Petersburg and Moscow. And there's just one ship. The ships is the one ship we don't own because the Russian government owns all the ships. But we were able to, add a lot of our features while still keeping the motif of Russia as they dictate. So we'll go through and show you a couple of that. Here's a picture of the ship. This is a smaller ship, most intimate ship on the Russian riverways, only 112 passengers. Runs from May through October. It sells out extremely quick, but it's not a spaceship as we call it because we're kind of restricted on what we can do. So the itinerary itself, the next slide is, again, a lot of you might be familiar. You go from St. Petersburg to Moscow or vice versa through a series of canals, lakes, and rivers. Quite the experience. People want to learn more about Russian culture, Russian history, etc. 15 days. So the next slide is there's a lunch at this famous restaurant that we'd stop at, and it's near St. Petersburg, outside of St. Petersburg, in the area that Pushkin, the famous poet and writer from Russia, spent some time. Next slide is another, of course, you have to have a ballet, so we flew the ballet in the Imperial Palace in St. Petersburg. Next slide will be the interior of the lounge, so you can see there's a lot of red, Russian red in there and stuff. So it's still very nice. Speaking to some people who have been on some of the older ships in Russia, it was a little scary, but you can rest assured the clients will have the latest types of accommodations. Next slide would be a stateroom. So you can see again, Scenic said its influence with this beautiful warm colors that they are able to put onto the Russian ship. They don't have the special feature like the deck, the sunroom deck. Couldn't do that on the Russian ship, but they do have decks, so that's nice. The bathroom is the next slide. So the bathrooms are modern. Again, the older ships, I've heard some funny stories about those, but anyway, beautiful facilities. Next slide would be kind of a recap. So for those of you who can see this, it really does demonstrate how inclusive Scenic is. Your client, there'll be one price, again, similar to selling Regent. One price up front. It's going to look higher than anybody else at first until you start to add up all the inclusions, you know, the transfer service, all the tipping, all gratuities. They're not really supposed to tip or do any type of gratuity to anybody on or off ship. All the meals with different dining choices, all the beverages all day, every day, the entertainment on board, the bicycles, the excursions, all those options, the GPS unit, and the complimentary Wi-Fi and infotainment system, all that's included in one price. So if you, for those clients that really appreciate just paying something up front, don't mind it might be a little more because they're getting extra service and extra inclusions. This is the ideal program for them. They'll have larger cabins than most other people and very interesting itineraries with lots of options and choices for them. So I'd like to conclude here in a second and talk a little bit first about booking. Scenic is a very popular cruise line. We have 10 ships. We'll have 12, 14 next year. There's 2 more coming on the Scenic side. And I'll talk about Emerald here in a second. They're getting 2 more. But it's the way they price their product. They have early booking in 3 different stages, early booking 1, 2, 3. Those are sort of stipulated with a date, but they are also subject to being changed when inventory reaches a certain level. So that means that you really need to, your customer has an interest in a Scenic cruise, they really need to get the best value to book right away and not hesitate. So it's a little bit different than some of the other cruise lines on that issue, but a lot of their business comes out of Australia, and the Australians have a tendency to travel for 3 or 4 weeks at a shot, and they have a tendency to book way out, as far out as they can, because they've got huge airfare issues that they got to deal with. And so you'll find that the ships will fill up halfway with Australians, especially the longer cruises. So the earlier you book, the better price and the better cabin options you have. We do have a website, scenicruises.com. I encourage you to go on that website. There's a couple things there. We do have an agent site link in the upper right. You'll see it. There's a booking engine that has live inventory there that if you want to market Scenic, I recommend that you get signed up for that. You can send in to get signed up or contact myself or anybody at Scenic, and we need to issue you a username and password. Also on that site, on the front page, is a video that's very nice to look at. It was done by a radio station in Los Angeles, and it's a lovely video that you can look at, or you can inform your clients to look at. There's also a testimonial link there from travel agents, so from some of your peers who went on the ship back in October. And so and the 2015 pre-release brochure is now available. You can order that off the site, and we'll send some to you. So the next slide is kind of a summary of what I've said. It's the fact that you can provide your passengers with an all-inclusive experience, a luxury cruise experience on the European rivers of Russia. You can have happy clients because when they check out, they won't owe anything unless they got a massage or haircut. So you pay up front months ahead of time, and it seems like a free cruise after that. And then finally, just a touch on Emerald Waterways. Emerald is brand new this year. You'll start to hear more about it soon. There's going to be 2 ships, one on the Rhine, one on Danube. And very innovative, more of a 4 stars, so the pricing is a little bit down. The cabins are going to be a little bit smaller. Innovative, they have a pool they put on the back. It's a full-size pool, a bar next to it, which serves not only drinks, but also ice cream and things like that. And then at night, they convert this. They can put a top over it and convert it into a cinema at night. So, and if you have a group on board, we can have special group functions and whatnot. So Emerald is ideal for groups, if you have groups. So it's great. They don't have the sunroom, so to speak, but they have the panorama window with that sunroom effect where they can push the window down with the button and have an open air system. So it's excellent. So that's, and there are 2 more ships coming out next year. So that's pretty much concludes my presentation. I'm sorry about any inconvenience with the GoToMeeting, but I hope most of you got to see it. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Randy. Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny. We have a lot of support here. Thank you. That was a fantastic presentation. And again, I apologize for the software glitch that we were experiencing. I hope most of you got to see all of the slides, and we will be sending the slides to everybody who's in on this webinar. So we do have several questions. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Joni Ogg, who has been keeping track of them. And Randy will let Joni ask you the agent's questions. Joni?
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks, everybody, too, for your patience today. It's been a little frustrating, I know, for y'all with someone not being able to see these slides. So I do really appreciate you guys being so nice about it, because we're freaking out here. So anyways, first question for you, Randy. I'm interested in finding out about groups and minimum cabins for groups, accessibility on board for wheelchairs, walkers, tour accessibility. So the question is quite long, but I think it's more focused around whether or not that is available for groups on your ships.
Okay. Groups, we'll take groups of 10. At 10, you get or 9, you get with the shorter cruises at 9, 8-day cruises, you get 1 tour conductor. Longer cruises, it needs to be a little more than that. You can hold space for a certain amount of time. If you want specific cabins, the upper deck, for example, you have to put a deposit down to hold those. And then on the handicap situation, a couple things. One, they do have junior suites on board. The junior suites are to accommodate wheelchairs and people that have a hard time getting around. They're close to the elevator. So people just merely have to get into the elevator, go up, and the next cabin would be the junior suite. So, but you know, the thing about handicap on river cruises, it can be a little bit difficult if they really have a hard time getting around, getting on and off the ships. And this is true of any river cruise ship. There's plenty of people there to help them, but it's just the gangplanks are pretty small, and sometimes the ships will end up tying up next to each other, so you have to go from one to the other to get on shore. So it just makes sure your client is aware of that. The cruise line would do as much as they can to help, and also, you know, the walking tours are kind of complicated when you go through the cobblestone streets and things like that.
Okay, I have another question for you. Someone who was able to see the slides, good for that. What is the dress code on board with all the men in the jackets like I said in the picture? It seems a bit more than business casual.
Well, no, it's casual. Those guys have to dress up. That's their job. The other people on the ship, the clientele, are there to have fun. So even though it's a luxury 5-star experience, jacket and coats are not required. I think a lot of gentlemen will have jackets to wear, but probably not a tie. A lot of ladies might dress up, especially for the special events, if they're in the table de rive or even the portobellos, but it's not necessary. I think most people will kind of dress up, country club casual type, you know, slacks and a shirt or whatever, but really no formal event.
Okay. Another question someone has is, what is the percentage of American passengers on board?
Well, we're hoping that increases. Yeah, as I mentioned, Scenic is pretty new to the U.S. They did some just some kind of basic marketing over the last couple of years to introduce the name. We're trying to get, with opportunities like this, trying to get the word out specifically to agents so you understand where Scenic fits and that we can get more Americans on board. You find the longer cruises, there's going to be more Australians because they do take the longer vacations. The shorter cruises, we've been the new U.S. Staff here. We have gotten the support of Scenic to create more 8-day cruises, which are obviously more popular to most Americans. So that's increasing. So we're seeing a lot of demand, an increasing amount of demand for the product. So it will increase, but the Australians are a heck of a lot of fun to travel with too.
Okay. Question about your staffing in Vancouver, asking if you're adding more staff to your groups department. Perhaps there's been a slowdown on response or something like that.
Yeah, we're actually what we're doing is we're building a new reservation staff in Boston, in the U.S. office in Boston, and this is all pretty new. They've added 2 or 3 reservation people there now. Sometimes when you call, you'll get the Boston people. That's going to be a transition. I mean, I'm not sure how long, over the next year probably, to really get that built up to speed. But again, if you're having trouble getting through, one thing that does work is the booking engine. I find it, I signed up for it, I got in, I found it pretty easy to navigate. So just let me know, or you can go online and make a request, and we'll get you a username and password.
Okay. Along with that, there's a question about commissions. Someone's saying, what is the commission by booking directly through Scenic on the website?
What was the last word?
What is the commission by booking directly through Scenic on your website?
It doesn't matter whether you book direct or call. The starting commission is 12%. We're not currently working with any consortia. We're in discussions with most of them. So if you want to move up through your host agency or directly to consortia and let them know that it's important to you that they talk to us, and then we'll be negotiating hopefully some better commission levels. But you also remember that you get paid commission on the entire amount. So you're getting paid commission on the tips, gratuities, all the excursions, everything. So
yeah, that's
tends to be a little bit higher.
No kidding. Someone's asking, how often are you serving dinner in La Rive? Do all clients on the top deck get to enjoy this?
Yeah, it's every night on board, and they sign up, and it's the top deck, and there's plenty of room for everybody on the top deck to participate in that.
Along with that, another question about restaurants. Are reservations required for the Portobello restaurant?
Yeah, you sign up once you get on board.
So is that the same as the one I was just asking you about?
No, that's different. Portobello's is 36, accommodates 36. It's in the back of the lounge. Table La Rive is in the back of the dining room.
Okay, thanks. All right. What is the height of the ceilings on the ships? Good question. Might stump you now.
Haven't had that one
See?
before.
You haven't been on our webinars before.
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't know. For me, it was plenty. I'm 5'10", but
Okay.
we had a couple of tall people. I didn't notice anybody bending over or anything. So it's pretty good size.
Sign.
Again, they really focus on all the ships on the rivers have to be the same size to go through the locks and fit under the bridges. So there's only so much you can do. Scenic has maxed it out. You go through some of these locks, is literally 2 inches on each side.
Yeah,
so yeah, it's crazy.
Another question, is there a doctor on board? That's a good question.
That is a good question. No, there is not. I don't know if there are any river cruises that have a full-time doctor. You're right by cities all the time, hardly ever very remote. And the other advantage of Scenic is we have the buses. So if they're right behind us all the time. If something were to occur, the buses would be there immediately, and we could ship somebody out. We would not have to wait for an ambulance or a taxi or whatever the case may be. The other thing about the buses is if there's, as you well know, rivers are unpredictable. So last year there was a flood on the Danube, so all the river cruises had to stop. They could not go all the way up or all the way down. Scenic at that time had 2 ships, one coming up, one going down. They just informed the people in the morning, the passengers, to go ahead and take the buses and do your tour, and the bus will bring you back to the other ship, and we'll flip the baggage. So essentially they're identical ships, so they went in the same cabin, but we were on different ships, and that ship turned around, went back down, and the other ship turned around, went back up. So they only missed that one little portion where the flood was, whereas everybody else really had to cancel the cruise.
Okay, and I've got just two more questions, if you don't mind. How many passengers will Scenic hold, and is there an elevator on board? And I think you answered that. I think there's an elevator. You already said that.
Oh, elevator, yeah. Well, the ships, the majority of the major ships that go on the Rhine, the Danube, the Rhone, will hold 169 passengers. There's a couple that have 167. I haven't had this question yet, so I'll answer it before somebody asks it. There is one single cabin on there that people can get. The Gem itself, the new one on the Seine, because it's a low water ship, they keep the passenger count down to 128. And I mentioned the TSAR in Russia is 112 passengers. Okay. The crew ratio, by the way, is typically around 3 passengers to every crew.
Wow, that's great. Okay, and this is the last question comment, and then I think we can turn it back to Sandy, and Sandy will kind of finalize and get your contact information as well, Randy. But this person wrote, and this is Maisie. Maisie, I have to thank you for this, because Sandy and I have been kind of nervous throughout this last webinar here, trying to figure out what was wrong with it. And she writes, thank you, awesome job. Thank you for that, Maisie. I have sold Scenic, but I have yet to sail on her. And she has another question for you, Randy. Will there be any FAMs in 2014?
Yes, we're doing a couple. 14 is not totally sold out, but it's pretty tough. It's spring and fall. There's some openings there. Again, if you get on the booking engine, you see where there's openings. If you want to go on your own, there's certainly an opportunity. But you know, if you're selling Scenic and have a marketing plan where you want to sell it some more and do some marketing, we'd love to talk to you about it. And then there may be some FAMs that if something comes up, we'd certainly want to get you on board. So if you want to, if that's the case, you can email me. I'm a consultant, so I don't have a Scenic email address. Mine is actually scenic@travel-roi.com. So that's just a consulting company I have. So scenic@travel-roi.com, travel-roi.com. If you want to email me that you're interested in getting a little bit more focused on Scenic, and I'll let you know what the opportunities are.
Fantastic. Joni, thank you for asking those questions. Thank you to our audience for participating and for asking the questions, and many, many thanks to Randy Goodrich. And you did great considering, even considering all the challenges we had today. So thank you very much for this wonderful presentation, and thanks to our audience. We hope you'll come back and see us again, and we will see you next time. Take care and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.